facilitating the session. I'm a council member. I'm also your provincial representative on SACPlan. So, yeah, it's an exciting journey, and we are very excited to be here. I'm sharing up front my contact details, and I am very proud in sharing even my registration details. There's no POP-PR disclaimers here. I was in a meeting the other day, and the planner said, we're not giving our registration numbers, what about POP-PR? And I said, well, I'm proudly professional. But my colleague Tuki just observed that I'm actually celebrating 30 years. Isn't that wonderful? So I didn't even know that. Please send for facilitation any questions or inputs that you may want to give into the session to my number. Just start with session 3 and send me your questions, and then we can facilitate the process. I am joined by my esteemed colleagues on the panel here today in the session about, guess what, professionalization. It's the closest I get to any professorship. So thank you to the creators of this agenda for thinking about me as professori as well. But I'm the bearer of the good news of perhaps trying to make sense of what this thing will professionalization and capacity building and things means, with the help of my esteemed colleagues, firstly from our national SALGA office, Mr. Zanu Futwa. Zanu is a national SALGA specialist in planning, land and rural development. So welcome, Zanu, and thank you for joining us. And then also by Mr. Okkert Pretorius from the University of Johannesburg. Okkert is in the urban and regional planning section of UJ. So welcome, colleagues. We'll give you an opportunity just now. All the presentations are loaded. We're ready to shoot. I just thought that, you know what, when we talk about professionalism and codes of conduct and all of these things, what do we really mean? And I thought of just introducing a bit, not in a lecture style, because I'm not a lecturer. I'm a girl from a farm. I should stay away from lecturing. So I wanted to make sense of this. What is this, if you pronounce it, and we have to, unfortunately, speak a little bit of colonial now, because that's the word we're dealing with. Professionalism. It's a noun, says the Oxford Dictionary, that speaks to the competences or the skills expected of a profession. We begin to see some of the just linkages with what we've said already to each other this morning. It's about the skills, it's about the competences that we require before we can call ourselves professionals. It's the key to quality and efficiency and professionalism. So these are key words that I really found very interesting, and it was kind of a discovery journey for me when I went through this. And it comes from a Latin word. The Latin word means, or is, I don't know how you pronounce it, professio? I have no idea. But the meaning, the root meaning, is public acknowledgement. And at the core of it, this word public, is for me was actually also quite enlightening. For years, I've just said I'm celebrating 30 years. It's about this professionalism. What are you? I'm a city and regional planner. It's about the public acknowledgement of that skill. And yes, it relates to professor. Who of us, when we started out and when we say we're a professionals, don't think, what does it really mean? Is it about living the life? I mean, that's what comes to mind first. I was loath to put the slide up. But when Prof from UJ in the previous session talked about, and we talked about the Mercedeses and things, I thought I'm going to keep the slide. Professional is about living the life, isn't it? Yeah, you're a town planner. You must ask my mom what I am. She will tell you. Colleagues, this was a real humble experience. And just trying to make sense of this thing called professionalization. So I asked Google, you know that, and I need to protect all the chops and the academics and the research Googles and all of those things. This is just me trying to make sense of it. This is not the PhD doctoral. But Google actually says, and this is also quite humbling, professionalization is a social process. It links back to public, it links back to people, to communities. It's not about me and living the life. Why am I in this profession? If anyone wants to ask me, is it about the money? I think we all know by now it's not about the money. There's very little money in this. But it's a social process. And it transforms itself. It learns, and it redirects, and it corrects. Because ultimately, it's about integrity, and it's about that competence that we're all aspiring to. Wikipedia, our favorite research engine, search engine. It's about advancing the profession as a whole. It's not about me. And this is my journey of discovering. That's why I'm making it very personal. So bottom up as much as is a top down. We hear a SAC plan, hosting. And I wish someone could take me through this 30 years ago when I was a young planner. Then probably I would have saved myself a lot of hardship. And guess what? I then, at my age, you can see I'm grey, I've been younger for longer. I asked AI to give me a short list of core components. And there's a whole range of things. Yeah, it gives you lists and lists and lists. I say, no, make it shorter. It's about specialized knowledge. Can you see this? It's coming through again. Our colleagues from CHOPS, all of us, that's about continuous learning. Specialized knowledge. But there are certain standards, and standards for good reasons, usually about health and safety and those kinds of things. But it's all about a code of ethics, and this is where we're coming and introducing the topic for my learned friends to take us through a much more deeper dive into this. But there's also necessary for us to certify or license. It's a trust thing. It's when you buy a car or a cell phone, you take a warranty out, or you trust the brand. You trust the brand. That's where the certification comes in. But all of that is a lot of, perhaps a bit of academic talk. It is about how these components work together and how we interpret it together and how we make it our own, that we ensure that members of the profession are well trained. If we are going to rely on the PPA to give us and identify work that only professional planners will do, we need to make sure we are well trained. We need to make sure that we are competent, applying that training, and committed. And it comes to that ethical thing. And I then said to AI, okay, now let's have a bit of fun, eh? Planners like to have fun. Please draw me a picture. And I know this is not gender correct and balanced. And I know all of those things. And I said, but please just draw me a little infographic and explain these things and I can understand it even more. And what it does, and I asked it to give this picture a title, and the title is, you know what, professionalism is about symbolized icons of, you see it keeps on coming through, education, certification, ethics, which is non-negotiable. And we call this thing the blueprint of excellence. These are your pillars of professionalism. And that's what we'll be engaging on. But it needs a structured and a thoughtful approach. And it links to, unfortunately, one of the items on the agenda that's called institutionalization. Our colleague cannot make it. He's been redeployed. So we do apologize. We'll save a bit of time there. There won't be a presentation on that. But it links to that structured and thoughtful approach to achieving and maintaining and learning. Needs a bit of structure, needs a bit of oversight, needs a lot of support. And it speaks to the ideal institutionalization of an organization called SACPLAN, which is part of a broader built environment, community of practice. I'm not going to go through the SACPLAN Code of Conduct. Who has read it? You. There's an extra orange bag for grabs, or a box of Smarties. I started reading through it, and then I thought, okay, now I can't do it. So again, I asked my co-pilot, which is fully licensed in the organization that I work for. They call it co-pilot light because they don't trust us fully to let us loose in AI. And I asked, summarize the code of conduct for me. And this is a summary, and I think quite a good summary. But at the end of it, addresses the core components. If you want to do the code of conduct light, this is the slide you can read. If you go for your next interview, the code of conduct in SACPLAN, and in terms of the planning professions, professionalization work we're doing, is really there as a measure of professional commitment and accountability. Guess what? To the public. It's a framework for planners to maintain our integrity and our values. This is a different language. This is not about the technical competencies. This is asking something from us. It talks values, it talks principles, it talks ethics. And I think this is my last slide. Having lived through 30 years of professional life, and with that, before that, we had a longer term, minimum 36 months. I think I took 48 or even longer to register. We kind of find that what we think is the right thing to do, and it came through this morning, every time that we think, yes, we've got the solution, because planners like to fix stuff. We heard it this morning. Something changes. Everything changes. And this is a fascinating book because it's on the shoulders of giants. We can learn that every time that we find the meaning of life or find a solution, they change it. The world happens and then it goes on. It becomes a professional journey. And that foundational start is exceptionally important. The ongoing process of professional development cannot be underestimated, or cannot say that enough. Are we aware of these global mega trends, these change drivers and its impact on us? Urbanization, we talk about urbanization, we talk about digitization. It's got fundamental and significant impacts. Are we aware of those things? Are we making sense of it? Because remember, professionalization is about that very specific skill that we bring to interpret, to assist, to support for the public good. The role of professional bodies and associations is equally important if we look at that professional journey. We are here, colleagues, not as planners. We are here as a community of practice, and we have our colleagues from the built environment and other sectors in the room with us. We cannot do this alone. Actually, we're not supposed to do it alone. It's relational. Tom Peters said in his book, Reimagine, it's all about the T. I won't say he added stupid, but it's about getting to know each other. A community of practice. Pick up the phone. Peer review. Ask questions. Impact of professionalization on the society and the individual. Back to basics. What are those back to basics things? Ethics is non-negotiable. That's what professionalization tells us. And then it came through. We need evidence, not evidence for the sake of evidence. We really need to know what's that data or that community or those specific, know your municipality, know your community needs. Data and insights is absolutely critical because foxes don't forecast to survive. Foxes read the environment and adapt. Clem Sunter in the book, Thinking the Future. So colleagues, with those few words, I want you to think about key questions. What are those things that inhibits us from really professionalizing? What are those biggest challenges? We'll come back to that. I want to hand over to my colleagues. Thank you for these few minutes of allowing us to introduce just the topic of professionalization, giving it a slightly different lens. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Zanu, if you don't mind, Mr. Futwa, to come forward, and I will get your presentation up for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Zanokolo Futwa. I'm from Salga, as indicated. I have been asked to come share with you the professionalization framework for local government. And before I start, I just want to acknowledge the presence of our chairperson, the board, Josi, my colleagues, and also the planners, aspiring planners that are in the room, and planners that are out there trying to make this profession work and trying to make a contribution to society through the lens of this profession. You are what people see in this profession. Your actions, your reports, your decisions are what makes people determine the value or view this profession. So, Josi earlier gave a very good context which I subscribe to. It is important to understand that we are where we are today because of a set of choices that we've made, and we have to own up to those choices. One of the choices we've made was to move away from a segregated society that was informed by an intentional government process and an intentional state policy. It required us to make compromises. And out of those compromises, we are where we are. So what we find out today, I was listening in the presentations earlier, what we find out today is as a result of all of those which we need to own. And we need to find solutions to this problem together. Professionalization is one of the inputs that we have selected as SALGA, South African Local Government Association. This is what I'll share with you. I've got about 10 minutes, so I will reduce a presentation of 33 slides into 10 minutes. It will be shared with everybody. So what we've done is we have identified professionalization as part of our problem statement when we went to conference in March 2022. And that's a conference in which all municipalities in this country come together to define what it is they want to pursue in the subsequent or ensuing year.
I'm sorry for doing that. It's not displaying on the screen. I think
Okay.
I may have to just quickly apologies for this if you want to see the presentation.
Okay. That's Google working?
I have no idea.
So what we did, we then tried to refresh our mandate by listening to our members. And one of the things that they asked us to do was to deal with what society is giving back to us through the feedback that we get from communities. That there is a break in trust between the citizen and the state in South Africa. There is a break in trust between the ordinary citizen and authority in South Africa, whether that authority is in the form of a community leader, a elected representative, public representative, in the context of local government, a councillor, in the context of what we did on 29th May, your MECs and your premiers or your members of parliament. So one of the things that we looked at in terms of understanding what informs that was that people felt that there was insufficient value system that informs how we decide. That informs how we pursue the objects of our responsibilities or jobs or duties. That is why we have seen a lot of ordinary expectations unmet, in which you have money that belongs to all of us, which is set aside for putting a priority which we have chosen together. Earlier, I think the professor from UJ indicated that there is no meaning to having IDPs, NS, special frameworks, and LUS. I think people do actually participate in those. And there is a connection between the change on the ground and those activities. As much as there is frustration about the dimensions of that, it is important to acknowledge that there is. It is beginning. If you look at South Africa today and take the technology that Dalrat has started, move back in time, stand in 1991, in your own area where you were born, 1993, take that picture, walk with that picture to today, and tell me there's no change. We have done, we've done a study. The framework that we have adopted is a framework that we decided to make sure that as state, we know that in our state, one of the choices we made was to create a single government that is made of 3 spheres. And these spheres are independent. We don't underestimate that. They are interdependent, and they have exclusive constitutional responsibilities, each of the spheres. So what we did was to make sure that we deal with this breakage of trust by going back to instill values. And we identified the area of professionalization so that people that are working in government, working in municipalities, understand the implications of their roles and the decisions that they take, and understand the trust that is put in them by society in terms of those roles and responsibilities, as well as the obligations that are on you as you take that decision in an MPT, as you take that decision in a council, as you take that decision in an input that you are submitting to be considered by an NPT. So it's important that we take those things into account. Yours, you are working for a municipality, but you are actually working for public, and you have an obligation. Mistakes of doctors are sitting somewhere, maybe in a cemetery. Mistakes of engineers are sitting somewhere. Mistakes of planners, they are sitting somewhere. If you are unable to connect your everyday decision to what happens in society, look at what happened in George, the building that fell in George. Those are our decisions. And there's a connection between that decision and what you do, and the ethics that informs how you take those decisions. So professionalization is to help us to look at that. So the context is this. I'm not going to read word for word. We have a constitutional duty to do as local government. And it is stated there in the Constitution in Section 152. It is also supplemented by what you will find in Schedules 4B and 5B, with about 44 to 60 duties that are listed. If you never understood the importance of local government, out of the 60 items that are there, 63 or so items that are there, 75% are duties of local government. So if we don't make this system work in South Africa at local level, we are doomed. We also committed in the Constitution to a value system. And for those that are inside the state, working inside government, Section 195 gives you what we have translated into Batupile. And this is what has informed the framework that we have modified for local government in terms of the professionalization. It is a framework that we were asked to make sure that we put this framework so that it can regulate the guidelines and regulate the uniform standards for human resource administration in our municipalities. It can also deal with salary grading by municipal classification, because these are some of the things that inform who you get as a skill, where, because people make choices about deploying their skills and making them available to the market based on certain needs. So if you're a rural municipality, for example, it becomes difficult to get your top engineers if you're going to compete with City of Joburg, or you're going to compete with private sector. So we are trying to introduce things that must incentivize those kinds of decisions to also be made in a manner that allows people to go to local government and work there. It's also important because it also must deal with transforming municipal employment practices, so that even in our own way of recruiting talent, nurturing talent, and deploying talent to responsibilities, we are able to make sure that we are conscious of developing that talent. This framework is informed by these four things. It is informed by a focus on leadership and managerial profession, meaning producing a leader out of you sitting in a municipal desk, producing a leader out of you being a public representative that joins us. And there's many things we do in relation to that. We have a virtual academy that is informed by a philosophy that has 3 steps. 1, when you enter the system of local government, we induct you. Once you are deployed in your municipality as a member of a committee that informs council or decides about council business, we then train you in what we call portfolio-based training, so that if you are in finance, we bring you finance skills. If you are in economics, we bring you economic-related skills, and so on. The reason for that is because we have realized that because of the system that we have chosen, it is a system that combines 3 sets of inputs, where we select people to go represent our interests, and we don't ask those people if, what is in your CV, before we elect you. Tomorrow, that person may be in a council meeting, voted as the MMC of finance. It's going to be responsible for your money. So we've realized that there's a mismatch between that in the system, so we try to fill that. The third one is, once you're inside, we do this also with the administration. Once you're inside the system, we then link you to mentoring programs. We have a network of mentoring programs internally inside the country with a number of universities and others, as well as outside the country, particularly for our public representatives, where we put them into peers internationally that can be able to enhance their skills as leaders. So local government service orientation, it's the Batupile principles, the ability to connect what the decision that you're going to make to the right and wrong, the ethics about it. Technical profession, the connection between us and SACPlan and other bodies to continuously develop the skill and make sure that this skill is fit for purpose. There are many things that are changing in the dynamic of the planning environment out there. Some of those things you will never be taught in any of the 26 universities in South Africa. You will learn when you are on the field. Most of the curriculums that are in the approved universities, even by SACPlan to provide planning, do not take into account the full scale of the scope of things that will confront you in your month 1 of being employed to decide on. So it is important to have that continuous process of reinforcing the skill and strengthening the skill. Institutional professionalization, that is, as planners, as bodies, as communities of practice, it is important that we depend on each other, we support each other, and we develop those for that purpose. So there are 5 key pillars. I'm not going to go through these pillars. I'll just use the headline slide for this process. It is based on those issues that I've indicated. What I want to share with you this will deal with all of those, is this. Where do we get the people that turned out to be professionals and submit their applications to join SACPLAN as members? They come through this process of training. And what you see there are things that we picked out of a study that we did, a formal study, to understand the levels of professionalization for planning, particularly in municipalities. And that study, the report is available. You can be able to access it free of charge. Activities that make use of this skill once you're out there in the market, for those that are out of the system and are saying, where do I get a job? Or what do I do? How do I contribute to society? These are some of the areas that actually absorb this in the labor market as your skill. In a municipality, this is a range that we utilize. And this is the extent to which we utilize that range. Earlier on, I think it was DDG Clinton that said, there is a lot of work that still needs to be done out there. If you look at this, there is a lot of gaps that require planning skill in municipalities. When we recruit in municipalities, it is important that we also look at this. There is a tendency to concentrate most of our planners to just few dimensions of planning, spatial planning particularly. And it tends to reduce the opportunity that we have in terms of deploying what you were trained to do. Because when you are trained on a multi-dimensional approach to space, dealing with space, and managing the processes on space. And we have some of those areas that require planners, and we don't get planners into those areas sufficiently in municipalities. Geomatics, particularly now that we are entering the new phase of fifth revolution. Property and infrastructure planning, particularly scenario planning and finance. These are some of the functional areas that have gaps, which we have identified, particularly in municipalities that require the skill that comes through this profession. These skill gaps, you'll get this, you get detailed information on why there is gaps in these areas. There are three key issues, because we try to understand that. One is we have tended to over-regulate the process of negotiating in a labor market between one who wants to purchase a skill and one who wants to offer a skill. And through that, we made a lot of difficulties for people to be able to get into these spaces, because you want to work in one province and this opportunity is in another province. All of us want to go and work in this one province for these other reasons. Us as planners here, we've created those conditions. We've created the conditions that respond to urbanization in the manner that it does. We've created the conditions that makes urbanization in South Africa today continue without challenging the implications of its over-concentration in its distribution of population, opportunity, and resources. We tended to equate rural to poor, rural to poverty, which is a mistake that we continue to do in the manner in which we approve plans, in the manner in which we distribute resources. What I wanted to raise, because it has implications for SACPLAN, we asked people when we're looking at levels of registrations. These are levels of registrations. We asked people that are not registered, why? Why are you not registered? We explained why it is important to be registered, and we asked them, and this is the feedback we got. Some indicated that it's a financial obligation, which we can understand, given the economy. Some indicated that they believed that it is not a requirement. And I think that's part of the work that we need to do in the education that we must roll out, awareness between ourselves and SACPLAN. Some indicated that they are not seeing value and it is not incentivizing them to want to wear this jacket. So there are things that we need to do in terms of creating opportunity. So this is what we found in the study. You can come in. That 70% of the people that work in municipalities have sufficient qualifications. However, the nature of the decisions that we get out there do not reflect this. So academic institutions, ask yourself, what is in this curriculum? Planners themselves, ask yourself, what makes you unable to take that decision that you know is a correct decision, which if you were employed by a private company, you would take? It is in your value system. So that's what explains that. Because it is not an issue of skills. If on average, we have masters out there at this level. From a money point of view, there is a variation across provinces. And that variation is caused because if you look at the National Special Development Framework, you look at the areas we've selected as areas of opportunity, and you take that drone, go back to 1985, you would see those concentration points. We are reifying the spatial transformation. In other words, we are not changing the spatial transformation. Why do we use state resources to reinforce what we don't want? It's our decision. It's planners who take those decisions. And the last point, please come.
This is so important, so I'm giving it the time.
I want to just raise this as my parting shot. There comes a time in the cycle of a nation or of a profession when difficult decisions have to be made. Thomas Sankara represents this thing in this way. You either have to make a choice between getting a champagne for few or getting clean drinking water for all. And that's the choice that faces you when you make that decision in terms of spatial transformation. If you don't make those decisions intentionally and without fear or favor, we are never going to get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Zano, for really an insightful presentation. I am awkward. Hopefully we will be able to immediately... Yeah, no, that is up to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sure I'm audible. Sorry, it's always a mission with a mic when it's my turn. All right, as I said, good afternoon, everyone. All protocol observed, as they say. I want to say thanks to SACPLAN for the invitation. Thanks to Shailene and Matao for the administration in the background as well, a very important role. And of course to our HOD, Prof. Tuli, it's an honor to attend this event with you as well. Right, I hope I can provide some value addition to this discussion and theme as well. So as you'll see from my topic, well, firstly, I'm Okker Pretorius. I'm from the Department of Urban Regional Planning from UJ. And my topic that I'm going to share with you today is a bit more relevant to the economic front, okay? Talking about the adaptation and adaptability of South African towns and cities. Okay, I'll try to take note of the time, session chair as well. All right, so of course in our discussions of the economic aspects relevant to adaptation, adaptability, economic resilience, we first have to anchor it into our study area, into our field, into urban and regional planning. And we have to take a look at the context, our space economy in South Africa. Now, this has also been highlighted by other speakers today, highlighted in the video of the National Spatial Development Framework as well. But really the growth engines is really concentrated in a few city regions in South Africa. From the Cape Town city region, Gauteng city region, Nelson Mandela Bay, as well as eThekwini. And really, these are also the concentration of the challenges that we experience in our urban context. We have significant urbanization, urban growth, and we know the challenges associated with that, the growth of informal settlements, service delivery challenges, infrastructure, etc. And in addition to those that most of the countries in the global south, developing countries, are also experiencing, in addition to those, we have the challenges due to colonial and apartheid spatial planning, with spatially segregated spaces, urban fragmentation, peripheral human settlements, and economic marginalization as well. I've included a few smaller maps just to indicate some of the divergence in household income, the divergence in access to formal service delivery, formal dwelling units, etc., in the maps there in the province of Gauteng as well among the municipalities. Right, so also referenced earlier was the imperative relating to the indicators and the sub-objectives inherent to SDG 11. Okay, so we know SDG 11 talks about creating sustainable, resilient, and inclusive and safe human settlements. But importantly there, we want to highlight the word resilient because that, of course, links to the topic, economic resilience. So the SDGs refer to, I suppose, to an extent, a more holistic investigation of resilience, social, environmental, as well as economic, while the focus here in our research predominantly is on the economic resilience side. So central to conceptualizing economic resilience is disruptions, is shocks to production systems, to regional economies, national economies, economies of municipalities and towns and cities. Right, so there's a few pillars inherent to resilience. And a system is resilient if it is preventative. Okay, it resists the impact of a shock. Okay, we'll have a few examples in the latter slides. If it absorbs the impact of the shock, if it adapts, and that's a time scale, is when we quantify economic resilience, we can do that by applying a quantitative analysis, equilibrium analysis, identifying a pre-shock growth path, quantifying the size of the economic shock, and then the time scale it takes that economy to recover from that economic shock. And then the fourth pillar is transformative. What's the capacity of an economy to stimulate, to catalyze structural change and structural transformation over time, proactively in response to broader, more long-term macroeconomic changes, changes in the population, demographics, in the geopolitical arena, whatever it may be. Okay, so those are the pillars that we look at. Okay, so in the specific conceptualization of economic resilience, in this regard, there's a short-term adaptation component and then also a long-term adaptability. Okay, so just a grammatical illustration of a growth path, and this is a GDP growth of study areas in the South African context. And we can see that with short-term adaptation, we, of course, identifying a shock, we can see a significant dip in GDP growth for these study areas. Anyone want to take a guess when this was, this specific dip? It was in the last 15 years. 2009. It's a global financial crisis in 2008, 2009. This one does not yet include the COVID dip, but of course, that's another study area we can incorporate into economic resilience and factors that influence the size of a shock as well as the recovery time of a shock. Again, I've listed a few examples of potential short-term disturbances. So we had the 2008-2009 global financial crisis originating in America, housing crisis, financial markets being affected, export markets being affected, and that translates into ripple effects to the rest of the world as well. COVID-19, of course, natural disasters, social unrests, all of these things can impact or, I suppose, catalyze short-term disturbances in economic growth. And then of equal importance is long-term adaptability. And that's where we talk about things like the fourth industrial revolution, advanced technology, climate change, as I mentioned, geopolitical factors, all of these things that influence the environment in which an economy operates, in which a production system operates. That's the trading environment, that's the international flow of factors of production, of capital, of labor, of technology, and things like that as well. So there's broader long-term perspective of what influences this environment in which an economy functions, basically. So in trying to quantify long-term adaptability, we look at average growth per annum, growth volatility over time, and that's just a few examples. Of course, there's a myriad of papers and existing research about quantifying adaptation and adaptability, and it'll be interesting to explore these, of course, further in future research as well. Okay, so the importance and factors inherent to economic resilience, well, basically the importance is basically in having this stability in economic growth. Okay, of course, economic growth, it's highly correlated to broader socioeconomic development objectives and achieving those objectives. We know it's not always an indication of equality in society, and that's where we as planners, I suppose on a spatial level, as we've seen it as in the introduction, but also on a macroeconomic level, can come in with interventions. Okay, but both short-term adaptability or short-term adaptation and long-term adaptability influences the growth path of a country. For instance, I've illustrated here or included a figure of the growth paths, and this is GDP per capita, not growth, it's the actual output of the United States and a few other countries from 1970 till 2022. So this is a 50-year growth period. And you can see from the growth path trajectories, short-term shocks also influence long-term growth paths. Okay, so if we can identify the factors that influence short-term adaptation in our economies, in our economies, then we can work towards delineating interventions toward mitigating the effects. Instilling factors that prevent shocks, that reduce the impacts of shocks, that stimulate improved recovery from shocks, and then that transformative ability of an economy to stimulate structural change over time proactively. Okay, so that underlines the importance of economic resilience. And then, of course, if there's divergence in economic resilience and differences in economic resilience among our municipalities, among our towns and provinces, because economic resilience affects long-term economic growth and the growth path, this might contribute to long-term economic divergence and worsen the situation in our towns and cities as well, and a divergence of economic growth, socioeconomic development, and opportunities over the long term as well. So it's in our interest, of course, to try and catalyze and stimulate economic resilience. Right, so for the interest of time, just a brief overview of the factors that influence economic resilience, and these are broad factors have been identified in research in diverse case studies, so it's not necessarily relevant to the specifically South African context, and therein lies an opportunity for further research in our specific case as well. But economic diversification is highlighted in most research, and that's basically reliance on one sector or a few industries for economic growth as a basis for your production system. It puts your economy at significant risk because if a specific short-term shock or long-term changes in the environment affects those specific sectors and industries, then the economy is in a bad place. Of course, infrastructure really is the basis of economic growth, the basis of the movement of factors of production, etc. Human capital, very important, healthy and educated workforce, is very important to catalyze that flexibility and adaptation, using and delineating new markets to explore, to catalyze economic growth. Innovation and entrepreneurship, very much connected to human capital, as well as access to finance and technology. Okay, and that's where specific interventions also come into mind. All right, so ensuring that our workforce is skilled, is healthy, with the correct education and health outcomes, has access to finance, can acquire advanced technology, can innovate, and have entrepreneurial capabilities. And this is also stimulated by the environment in which businesses operate, and regulations inherent thereto as well. And then, of course, governance and institutions. And this is also what the previous speaker, my colleague, also highlighted, the importance of that. Okay, almost done. I just wanted to provide an overview of some of the differences among the provinces in South Africa relating to, I suppose, independent variables that may be associated with the factors that influence, proxies to an extent of the factors that influence economic resilience. The first one is the trace index. Okay, so the trace index identifies whether the economy is concentrated in a few sectors. So the higher the trace index, the more concentrated an economy is in a few sectors. So of course, based on what we've seen in literature, the lower the trace index, the better it is in terms of economic diversification, and at least in theory, the better that would be in terms of having proper economic resilience. Okay, so the map illustrates differences between the municipalities, and most provinces have a higher average than national for the trace index, except for Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, also two of our powerhouse provinces in terms of economic growth and development. And there's some difference in terms of the metropolitan and non-metropolitan areas as well. I suppose one can, to an extent, see that as urban and rural, with some limitations, of course. But our metro municipalities are a bit more economic diversified than our non-metro municipalities. Okay, just to wrap up, we did the same exercise for the HDI. Significant differences between the provinces, labor productivity, capital productivity, and the point really there is that deduced from this very surface level quantitative analysis, which must be explored in further research, the independent variables that predict economic resilience vary between the provinces, which might not be a good indicator for economic resilience at this stage, or I suppose regional differences in economic resilience. And on top of this, we know there's significant challenges in terms of unemployment, disaster risk management, service delivery, and all of these informs potential responses. All right, so resilience is very much connected to the objectives already integrated into the National Spatial Development Framework, based on the video that we saw earlier as well. But there is room, it's not just macroeconomic or structural components that we can take a look at in terms of interventions. We are planners, or I suppose most of us are planners. We want to look toward spatial interventions and alleviating spatial inequalities. So some spatial interventions in the built environment really focuses on innovation and entrepreneurship, developing economic clusters, innovation hubs, renewal initiatives. All of these can contribute to catalyzing those factors and fostering innovation and flexibility in our economy. And of course, a holistic approach is required. We have to look at our factors of production, and these are all mentioned in broader economic policies as well. Factors of production, structural change, industrialization, the linkages with South Africa between our neighboring countries as part of SADC, of course, export markets, what we export, our linkages, the freedom of movement of labor, and things like that all influence adaptability and adaptation and the flexibilities in our economic structure. And I want to highlight the need for additional research, context-specific, within the specific context of South Africa, and I think there's a lot of potential there for, with the risk of being too specific, but for quantitative analyses, regression analyses to identify factors and independent variables that play into economic resilience. All right, thank you.
Righty, let's readjust. Thank you so much to both Zanu and Okkurt. I think two exceptionally important presentations. The one speaking to the transformational and the institutional aspect, so thank you for that. But also really highlighting the challenges this faces us. If we talk transformation, really, and its impact on the overall theme, land, and really, it's perhaps not about land, but it's really about the people. And then, if we talk data, Okkurt, thank you for taking us through this presentation, because it requires really a set of competencies that does not sit with everyone to be able to do this deep analysis, to really understand, and then to have that spatial awareness. So these are two key presentations. Thank you so much to the presenters. Colleagues, we're going to open the floor. I think we are doing good on time. We are making up a little bit of time on the agenda. I was hoping that we'll be done by 15:15, but you know what? We came a bit back late after tea or lunch. So I'm going to take some questions from the floor, but I do want to give a call out to Zakiti. I don't know where Zakiti is, and sitting in there's Zakiti. Zakiti used the opportunity to ask the question. So thank you, Zakiti. We're going to ask, and I'm going to ask the question on your behalf. I've asked my colleague from SALGA to field that question. Zakiti's question is, what are the challenges in transforming apartheid spatial patterns today? Why is it taking us so long to reverse the impacts of apartheid spatial planning? Yeah, that's a fully loaded question. Thank you. So we've noted your question and thank you for asking. Are there any further questions from the floor to the panel? I see a hand there and another hand, two hands, if we can get the roving mics. The lady and then the gentleman in the right block. Thank you.
Thanks to the presenters. My name is Zodwa Mabe from the department. My question is to Zanu Xolo. And thank you for the interesting presentation, but in one of the slides, Zanu, you mentioned the discrepancies between the salary scales in the rural municipalities vis-a-vis your urban municipalities. And we know also that goes with the capacity constraints, you know. So for me, it would be, okay, you've done the study, then what? I would want it, I'm interested from SALGA's perspective. You've presented what you found, and then what? Because for me, I mean, this goes way back. I'm not sure if I can say like 30 years later, we're still faced with the same, and in different podiums, we talk about it. And I don't know if 30 years later, from now on, some of us won't be around or in the space, still as planners, would have been on pension, probably. So we don't want to live a situation where 30 years later, young planners then still talk about what was then and it still is like now. Thank you.
The third question, and then we'll give an opportunity for responses, and I'll take another round of quick questions after that and then conclude the session.
Afternoon to everyone. My name is Kagiso Montwedi. A registered professional town planner at SACPlan as well. My question also goes to SALGA. I would like to ask, like, in terms of your perspective or your planning at SALGA, that with regards to like, why is it maybe in some instances you'll find that there are some municipalities that require a professional planner for submissions of land development applications and others don't? Is it not maybe something that SALGA can enforce, that throughout all these municipalities it's the same thing throughout? Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get an indication, apart from the hand there, is there anyone else? I think it's Tunisia. 2 more hands. Colleagues, do you want us to take all the questions, or shall we take a round of responses first? Okay, so let's take, I think it's Tunisia, and then the lady on the end here. Let's take these 2 questions, and then we'll close out. Thank you. Just switch it on. Thank you.
It's green. All right. Afternoon, everyone. I'm Tunisia. I'm a professional town planner for Rondo Consulting. I was quite intrigued by the stats that were brought forward by SALGA regarding registration, who's registered, who's not. And one of the key aspects that I've picked up here is that there is various perceptions on what registration means. So there's a perception of institutional requirements and, of course, acting with integrity. And then there's the sense of practice, professionalism, and ethics. And then there is also the sense of the perception of progress in terms of job applications, which I think a lot of candidates are seeing when we're applying for jobs. We're leaving university. We have this idea in mind, the world is our oyster. We are graduates, here we go. But when you enter the workspace, you obviously enter as a candidate or as a student town planner. And then when you start progressing, you're going through your training, whether it be 3 years, 5 years, however long, you are then met with more job applications that require you to be a professional town planner. That's when I think the conflict starts, erupting, is that I've been here for 5 years, I've been here for 10 years. When will I be competent? When will I not? And who decides that I'm competent? Is it solely the supervisor? And then, you have very, very important engagements with SALGA, SACPlan, who step in and assist. So that partnership is very important for us as candidates to see, and we appreciate that. But I think just those perceptions, because if you want to meet the integral practice and ensuring that we as professionals have competent skills to offer the industry, there also needs to be met with the job applications requirements meeting us halfway. So it's not really a question. I think it's more food for thought that we all have a group chat that says 10 years work experience, 15 years work experience. I'm still a candidate. So where am I going to get this if I don't have those opportunities? And recently just engaged another candidate town planner who said that she received feedback that she first has to get a job and a supervisor before she even becomes a candidate. So those are all conflicts. And how do we act integral if at the same time we need to survive?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to take one more question, short question, and then, colleagues, we've got some important matters to deal with administratively as well. So just move the mic to the end. Thank you.
Greetings, everyone. I am Mercy Babatunde, a student from the Northwest University. So she basically said what I wanted to, well, she said it in a nicer way, but I'm not going to be too harsh about it because it's not a platform to vent or anything. But my concern is basically regarding the engagement from the undergraduate level straight to the postgraduate level and, even to the external aspect of it. So I would say there's a gap for us, well, when it comes to being informed. Let me just rephrase. I don't know how it's done in other institutions, but I can speak for my institution, not to bash or anything, but I feel there's a gap where we are left to figure it out on our own, to go out, find information, and I feel like it shouldn't be that way. We should be carried along. I'm here today because I decided to go out of the way to actually network, and it's also based on the fact that I had the opportunity. I was not necessarily given the opportunity, but I found a way to reach out or basically all of that. But I feel like there's that gap and it needs to be filled because I'm also more or less concerned about the coming generation, basically. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those inputs. I don't think the last wasn't necessarily a question, but I think an exceptionally important point to make. I see, Prof. Hope, you've got your hand up. Do you want to respond or question? Can we take the last question and then we close the session? Because we also need to agree on the time that we're going to finish overall because of the department's own internal the requirements and logistics. But Prof. Hope, over to you.
No, mine is it's a quick one. It's for Orchid, and I wanted to also ask another, but I was told I must ask one question. Yeah, so the question that I have for Orchid is that actually I really like your presentation because it's bring to life data. I've been playing around with a lot of data and doing regression. So I'm checking if you've managed to do any regression for this, if you've done any regression. But also in one of your map, it looked very blue. I think that's stress index. Yeah, this one. So I was little bit confused to say, you said low and high, and I'm not seeing a lot of low. Of course, I'm seeing a Gauteng there, and I'm trying to understand the Gauteng, the disparity between Gauteng and Limpopo, and of course, and the other provinces and KZN. So if you can just explain a little bit around that. So the other one, it was just more of a, should I say, a comment. I like what he said, to say the university won't teach you everything. And I think I need to make a point because I'm in academic space and I want to step in a little bit here. You see, curriculums, the way are designed to make you articulate, right? So they're preparing you for anything, right? So when you go out there, you must be able to present, if it's a presenting skills, and we've got what we call core competencies and generic competencies. Now, the question is, are we putting those competencies? Because we're living in a changing world every single day, every single year, there's new technology coming in. And what happened is that's why we have what we call continuous CPD, right? Am I right, Prof? Yeah. So that's when you have to close the gap. So what I'm trying to say here, I'm saying, yes, it may be that some issues are not being taught in class, but are we taking opportunities for those continuous development? And I like the framework that you guys are proposing because it speaks to those issues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, colleagues. I'm going to close on the questions unless there are absolutely burning questions. I am going to ask Zanu, are we going to ask Okker to briefly respond? Because I think there may also be a real opportunity for an offline there. But and then Zanu, you can perhaps just field some of those. I think the last two questions probably relates more to a question to SACPlan and the communication and the road shows that we've been having, which we can also engage on, maybe for the sake of time offline when we do break. But let me allow my esteemed colleagues to briefly respond. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Thank you for the questions as well, Prof. Hope. With specific reference to the research that I have done, asking about the regression analysis, so not on the national level or national provincial level. I have done some research on mostly subcontinental, so on SADC level, taking a look at a case study of about 80 countries in the global south that are part of trading agreements. So that's WAMU in West Africa, EAC East Africa, and SADC. So there is some data analysis on that, but the nature of the variables changes a little bit. We still have something like the TRES index, but there the focus is much more on trade, on imports and export, trade balance, and what is being traded. I suppose more than macroeconomic things. Of course, economic diversification might be still be one. Factors of production is still there, but maybe you look at something a bit more different, or the focus might be a little bit less on a provincial or indeed a municipal level. And I think the most interesting study might be done on a municipal level, excuse me, just due to the data that would be available on that. I mean, more than 200 data points per independent, without going into detail too much, but there's a lot of potential there. So mostly on a national level, not subnational. So there's a lot of potential there. Right, so with regards to the maps, yes, so just a brief review. So these 4 maps indicate 4 different independent variables that might be seen as proxies. As I mentioned, no regression analysis has been done to date, but they are connected to the factors that might influence economic resilience. So this is the one map where the differences between the provinces aren't you know, if you can maybe go on one slide, like for instance, the HDI, the Human Development Index, there's significant differences. And this, the scale is basically the amount of provinces that, municipalities within provinces that are higher than the national average. So the scale works a bit better in a map like this, where there's a significant difference, but going to the stress index. So it's interesting that 7 of the 9 provinces, municipalities within those, the majority of municipalities in 7 of the 9 provinces has a higher trace index than a national average. So it shows you to what extent Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal brings that average a bit down, and the extent of economic diversification indeed in those 2 provinces. Okay, so there's another study there. It might be an interesting case study in terms of the success factors. What has been done, you know, of course it might be historical factors as well that really is the basis of the economies of the eThekwini city region or the Gauteng city region. But what are some of the success factors that we can take from these city regions and apply perhaps in other urban contexts or you know, non-metro contexts as well?
Thank you. I'm going to ask that we take the rest of the detailed discussions perhaps offline, because there's rich detail behind this. Thank you so much for that response. Colleagues, I just have to announce that I think we will have to finish not later than 5 minutes. I've just checked in with ZANU, because there are, I'll announce those just now, some serious tight time frames that we need to all agree to to finish in time, and the main event is about to start as well. Thank you, ZANU. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Zimkita, why is spatial transformation not happening? In a study we did to try and understand that, this is what we found. There's 14 findings in that study, but there are 3 things that are key. One is the land reform. The pace of the land reform in South Africa is impacting on that, and it is manifesting in pent-up hunger for land, in which the way we transform space now is speculative, because people just grab a building and a free piece of land, because the structured land reform process is not delivering at the pace we expected. The second one is resources linked to poor performance of our macroeconomy. It's been difficult to find resources into public purse, which then leverages the policy instruments that we need to guide in order to attract or direct the inputs from private sector and others. Uzodwa. And the last one is that even with our own money in local government, in the public, for example, if you look at the Human Settlements Program as one of the critical structuring, spatial structuring programs, we continue to follow the inherited apartheid structure, in which we look for cheaper land, which you find right at the end of the world, and we tax the poor. Discrepancies between urban and rural, what are we doing? We have taken this to the IGR platforms that we are working with as SALGA, because SALGA is a lobby and advocacy organization. We have engaged our partners to try and look at the remuneration framework that informs how we attract talent. We also looked at some proposals around relaxation of rigid regulations that impact on why a municipality cannot be able to decide on its own if they want to spend R1 million on a top skill in the country, even if that municipality does not have is not in an urban area, because we have introduced regulations that makes it restrictive, where, for example, there's a link between the local economy and the remuneration of a person at local government level, which is not there at provincial and national. Kagiso? The discrepancy, I think, maybe outside of this, we can have a conversation, because this issue also came in Northwest, in our rollout with SAC plan. Municipalities that are using different rules in terms of, for example, who submits, who has that. The departure point is, Spluma Section 42 provides us an answer on who can do that. And even if we are creative and innovative, we must do that within the framework of the parameters of the law and the Constitution. So we will continue to work with those municipalities, with SALGA, as SALGA, you can, outside of this, so that we can be able to advise them also where they are erring on the other side. Requirements, I think it's an important thing. I feel for, it's a transformation issue in this country, because we need to connect the where we come from. We also need to connect with the aspirations of people that are coming out of the training environment and have the skills and competencies but have not had the opportunity to be tested. So we need a balance of those. And I think we will continue to work on that. It is an area that is a weakness in the system. The gap in the process of talent and within our profession, I think SAC plan is listening to that. We need to work on that. What do we do with this talent, and how do we nurture this talent throughout the value chain? Sorry, I think the last one was a comment by Prof. Prof, I do take note of the comment you've made around the curriculum, and we are aware of that. We do realize, though, that it is important that we become intentional as well in redesigning the curriculums themselves so that they become relevant to the problem they need to solve at the end. Otherwise, what you are asking about the mismatch between the absorption in the labor market and the readiness of people that we produce will always exist. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, can we give a round of applause? We're going to close the session and move on to the main event. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for my esteemed colleagues for taking us through the session. And I'm going to hand back over to Prof. And Prof will make the announcements. So thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think I'm going to be the bad person here. I'm going to be the bad girl here. Colleagues, we are worried about time. We have to be out of this place at 5 o'clock. I guess the program was loaded. But we're still going to meet, right? This is the first, remember what I said? First planning Indaba. So there's a lot of Indabas coming. So once you start numbering things, you're going to number them again. So it means there's another number coming. So we need to be out here at 5 o'clock. I'm going to ask my colleague who's going to take the next session, which is Mr. Kopela. He's coming through. But we requested that our next speakers, they try to be as brief, but he's going to take us through the process. So what I want to announce, I want to make a request that we don't go for a quick break. Is that okay? So we just run. Is that fine? Okay, thank you so much. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Prof. Hope Magidimisha Chipungo. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And also let me thank the facilitator, Ms. Jacobs, who just facilitated before this session. I would like to observe the protocol by acknowledging and greeting the Chairperson of Council, Prof. Fana Sihlongonyane, and also the members of the council members of the SAC plan, our DDG President, Mr. Hyman, and also Hosi Ngove. He was here, but I still see his back. It means that he's still within our midst. And our planners and also other professionals in the built environment. Let me take this opportunity to thank you for having stayed this late. I'm going to be facilitating a session which is the young planners' voices, and also that will also lead to the 30, acknowledging the 30 young planning professionals for the year 2024. Let me also indicate that this is our third year that these awards have been held by SACPlan. We are marking the 48 years since the youth uprising that has led to, changes that are so positive that we see to this day. And then this also coincides with the 30-year celebration of freedom, which started in 1994. So this is our contribution as the South African Council of Planners, which we saw befitting that we also need to be acknowledging the very important role that our youth, particularly those in the planning fraternity, are playing. Earlier on, DDG, you were making indication that, planners need to be very transformative and dynamic. Let me indicate to you that for the past 3 years that we have been doing evaluations on the young planners profession, we are seeing planners transitioning from their normal town planner to areas of mining, engineering, water, legal, academia, environment, and geomatics. So this is very encouraging, and it's not only planners that are transitioning from planning to other fields. We're also seeing other professionals from your geomatics, from your engineering, joining the planning profession, and also, coming with a very different angle to how their contribution is within the spatial planning and land use management. So we are very excited that, this is very evolving and it's changing with times. Let me also indicate that the planners that are gonna be receiving the awards as the session closes, these are from planners from academia or from the academics, also planners from the private sector, and also from government, from various fields, because the evaluation criteria is very simple. The planner must be less than 35 years. They must also be having a registration either as candidate or professional or technical planner and be in good standing. And then they are evaluated based on the other evaluation criteria, which also includes assessing them how have they been doing in terms of academic progression or advancement, and also even the issues relating to mentorship. That, it's also one area. I think it was also indicated earlier on there that, this is another area that we need to start looking at to avail as much mentorship as possible, so that, there's also easy entry into the profession. Having said that, I'm now going to, without any waste of time, to request the 3 young planners to come forward. They are going to be sharing with us some very exciting and very innovative articles or presentations, which are not necessarily from the planning fraternity, but obviously they do touch on issues of spatial planning. I'm not going to introduce them for lack of time, but I will allow them, as they are ascending the podium, to briefly give a background about themselves and then immediately go on to their presentations. the panelists, I'm only having 10 minutes each. Please, if you can try to limit your presentation and your mini bio to that 10 minutes, I will appreciate. Thanks a lot. In terms of the agenda, I think we'll follow the sequences they appear on the agenda. I'm not having the agenda. Okay, we are going to start with it's Dr. LG Latehan. Can you please come and ascend the stage? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just while they're getting the presentation ready, maybe just a quick bio. So I am Louis Lategan. I hold a PhD from Northwest University, and I'm currently a NGAP lecturer at CPUT in Cape Town. My research interests include low-income housing and also green urbanism, and I have been registered as a professional planner since 2014. Thank you. So now that all due protocols have been observed, I want to start by thanking SACPLAN again for this invitation. It's always an honor to engage with our national governing body and also to interact with fellow planners and development professionals. So today I'm going to be presenting Moving On to Greener Pastures, a review of South Africa's housing mega project literature. And this is a draft paper that is still in the works as part of a bigger project, which is entitled A Review of South Africa's Housing Mega Project Literature, looking at greenwashed mega projects in the Global South. And this is a collaboration between myself as well as Mr. Brian Fisher-Holloway of CPUT, and then Professor Sarel Silje and Professor Yua Silje. So I'm going to skip through the table of contents straight into point number 1. So it's no revelation that in the age of the Anthropocene, we will continue to stress our social and natural systems. This realization already led to the inclusion of sustainability into development nomenclature in the 1980s and eventually to the Green Agenda. So the Green Agenda, of course, for environmentally responsible socio-economic development that supports efficiency, green building, the conservation and restoration of environmental resources. So within the Green Agenda, nature-based solutions have also increasingly been championed. There are international examples where nature-based solutions have been applied very broadly, and most of these focus on stormwater management through green infrastructure. So examples of green infrastructure can include formal and informal green spaces, things like grey-green elements, including green walls and roofs, bioswales, constructed wetlands, etc. But like the application examples, the bulk of research on nature-based solutions has been situated in the global north. And this is interesting because population growth and urbanization, as we know in the future in the global south, will continue to dwarf figures in the global north. And most of this development will happen or much of this development will happen as low density expansion, informal expansion, which will bring environmental degradation, resource stress, and at-risk populations. Interestingly, within the Global South, the majority of research on nature-based solutions originates from South Africa, where we still also continue to struggle with challenges like inequality, environmental degradation, resource stress, and etc. So this is what leads us to our next point, that many of these challenges are encapsulated in the country's escalating housing crisis. So since 1994, we have delivered around 3.8 million housing units of various description. But as we have noted before, these have mostly been developed in peripheral townships, mostly in low densities, in polluted neighborhoods with limited facilities, and especially limited green spaces. So to address these deficiencies, in 2014, the Minister of Human Settlements made a surprise announcement that all future mega or housing projects would be mega or catalytic projects. So the approach to mega projects set very ambitious objectives. Again, for dense, compact and integrated new cities with mixed uses, housing topologies and incomes within transit-orientated layouts. And these would be the result of public-private partnerships, intergovernmental collaboration, reduced bureaucracy, expedited timeframes, all to bring about this idea of regeneration and, of course, the age-old sustainability concept. Certain project proposals buzzed with words like recycling, urban agriculture, and urban greening. Here in Gauteng, the concept for the Lanseria Smart City, for example, has been reportedly designed to interface with nature and to benchmark green infrastructure to lead nature-based solutions in Africa and beyond. So to counterbalance many of the negative impacts related to mega projects, like social and environmental injustices, greener mega projects have been applied internationally at an increasing rate. Yet, many of these eco-cities are also trademarked by top-down approaches that sidestep socio-environmental approvals, displacing and gentrifying, ignoring context, and actually further disrupting the environment. So it is from this vantage that this paper sets out to answer two very simple questions. The first being, how broadly have housing mega projects been researched since 2014? And secondly, how has the scholarship engaged with the green issue? So to respond to this, the paper introduces a three-phase, seven-step literature review process. So that is shown there. In phase one, planning the review, we identified Google Scholar and 3 university databases as repositories for academic literature from 2014 to 2023. This will soon also include 2024. Search strings employed Boolean operators and key phrases, and we also looked at certain deductive codes at this stage. So under phase 2, conducting the review, titles up to page 5 of these databases were reviewed, and then abstracts and conclusions were screened. Snowball sampling was also applied to increase the size of the final sample. Under step 5, data extraction, bibliometric data were captured, and then Atlas TI was also applied as a qualitative research tool for inductive and deductive coding, from where themes could then be highlighted. Then lastly, phase 3, which is reporting results or reporting the outcomes. That's where something like today's presentation fits in, and obviously ultimate publication of the paper. So moving on to our results, bibliometric results. So since 2014, 54 publications could be identified, and they are listed there on the left. So the journal Urban Forum published most of these at 9.26%. We should also note 2 special issues related to mega projects in South Africa. This was from a 2015 special issue of Habitat International, which resulted in 5.56% of publications, and a 2017 special issue of Transformation, which also provided 9.26%. WITS, independently and through affiliations with the Gauteng City Region Observatory, was the most significant institutional contributor with 35.86%, followed by UCT, again independently, and in connection with its affiliation with the African Centre for Cities, which was involved in 12.96% of publications. And then other local and international institutions made up smaller shares each. So as of May 2024, these 54 publications generated 1,912 citations, or an average of 35.47 each. So in terms of what this means, if we look at content and themes, research uptake on housing megaprojects has been low compared to the significance of the issue, averaging around 2 publications per annum. These have mostly reflected on projects that were actually completed before the 2014 announcement, or those that failed to materialize. So no publication actually provides a complete list of the planned, ongoing or completed mega projects at national, provincial or local level, except for this one from Gauteng for planned projects from 2015. Interestingly also, mega projects from Gauteng have featured the most, attracted the most attention. For example, the unrealized Sino South African project Modderfontein, as well as the Corridors of Freedom initiative. Then there's also some imbalance in the way that the literature looks at sustainability in terms of these mega projects. So economic issues have overshadowed social and especially environmental concerns. Economic issues are mostly related to warnings for these new peripheral cities as dormitory commuter settlements, devoid of any opportunity, unemployment with deprivation, etc. Social issues refer to deficient stakeholder engagement, something we've spoken about at length today, protests, political grandstanding and manipulation, whilst environmental concerns are noted, but never as a standalone subject. So, for example, they would be noted in relation to environmentally sensitive land parcels where new development was to take place, or a focus on reduced vehicular movement. No plans for anything like a green city or an eco-city has been reported for state-subsidized housing. Lanseria, that I mentioned earlier, is only discussed in media articles, so in no academic publications. And the subtext for Lanseria shows that its green credentials are more likely secondary to smart city aspirations again, and that these are mostly focused on the affluent, with lower incomes added for compliance sake. So Modderfontein was also noted for pursuing environmental best practice, but of course the project went unrealized and these measures were never detailed. The prestige of a green environment is, however, repeatedly noted for developments like Steyn City, for example, which hosts 650,000 indigenous trees. So in conclusion, South Africa's housing mega projects, the move to mega projects is no longer up for debate. It's a train that's left the station. But the normative principles that steer these mega projects should be questioned. This requires understanding, but as this preliminary research shows, we are the first project to actually look at the research on mega projects at this stage, and the only one to engage with these green issues. The thrust of existing knowledge rests on a limited number of Gauteng projects, and this could be because lacking deeper understanding or deeper research action indicates slow development progress, so there's not much to report on yet. It could be due to a preference for post-implementation research, or just that a business-as-usual approach is actually dominating, and it's not significant enough to report on. So, even the limited green aspirations that have been noted in certain projects are likely green spin, which will ultimately only benefit the wealthy in these mega developments, thus maintaining our status quo of green apartheid. In terms of recommendations, there are many more in the actual paper, but very shortly, we can say that expanded research is again required on this issue of mega projects, and especially on greener mega projects, specifically greener projects that speak to low income groups. So how can we develop green mega projects for lower income groups that suit that context? So the idea then is not to duplicate best practice approaches, but to actually challenge the status quo and to support sustainable livelihoods in South Africa through our approaches. The intention is not to pose green as the only answer, because it can very easily become one of those buzzwords like smart cities, etc. It's not the only answer, but it is a fundamental question to ask if we want to catalyze sustainable human settlements. Thank you.
While my presentation is opening, I'll just start with the introduction. So, my name is Tsepo Maswanganyi. From the Mandela Mining Precinct, in terms of qualifications, I've got Masters of Urban Studies in Urban Politics and Governance. And today, I'll be presenting on a topic on mainstreaming planning technologies in the mining sector. So I was requested by Sesdsion to share my insights on mainstreaming planning technologies in the mining sector. So the organization that I represent or I'm working for focuses mainly on mining research. So this is just like a brief background about the organization. And my presentation will focus mainly on the technological side of mining and urban planning and how technologies can be interlinked within these two sectors for the benefit of mining host communities. The MMP comprises of 6 programs, namely SETCAP, RTIMS, AOK, MMS, LOCM, and the test mine. And my key focus for today will mainly be on the SETCAP program and briefly on the RTIMS program. I don't think I'll take much of time. So RTIMS is about real-time information management systems, as it implies on the slide. It's all about having like information to the right people at the right time. Essentially, what it's about is about smart connected systems in mining and for mining, but within the 4IR approach. So that already gives you like a hint of where the RTIMS focuses our attention on. And another key aspect for our team, so with this one I want to link it to the other programs within the MMP, is to raise awareness of what is available at the global scale. And also in terms of people impact and skills development, the RTIMS program works closely with SETCAP to drive change management in direct skills importation. And capability development as well. So we want technology that add value to people and to enhance their skills. And for the SETCAP, or the successful application of technology centered around people research program known as SETCAP, as a people focus. This program links to all the other submitted programs that I've just shared with you as modern mining systems, technologies, and processes will have like impact on people and host communities. So you'll hear me speaking a lot about mining host communities because that is how mining interlinks in my thinking with urban planning through the mining social labor plans and the municipalities IDPs. I'm sure you are familiar with those two, the SLPs and the IDPs. So the intent for SETCAP is to understand the challenges, effects, and impact of modernization on people within the mineral sector and how people relate to technology. And so how they relate to technology in the process of mining modernization. So from 2021, as you can see from the slide, we have identified, like through the mines, they've identified that the environmental, social, and governance, the ESG aspects of concern, as there is a demand for from stakeholders to balance between the planet, profit, and people. And then the focus was on modern mining, on modern training for mining with exemplar out of the possible modules that were provided. These modules support modern training methodologies with consideration of digital application. So on the far right from the on the presentation, I illustrate some of the deliverables from SETCAP program with a people-centered approach guided by the ESG agenda. And in 2022, we developed some enabling solutions, which in turn, in my view, will also assist with urban planning and future development within mining communities and are key towards development. So we've developed like other technologies that we've also developed. So the key one that I'll be focusing on 5 technological solutions that have got like guidelines and user videos, which include the training needs assessment tool, which looks at gathering data around community training needs, which helps to determine the skills base within a mining community. And another one is the communication and engagement tool for SMEs, which helps SMEs to meet their requirements to enable them to enter the supply chains of the mine or the mining companies. And then another one is the community social needs tool. And another one is the digital leadership competency assessment tool. Those two focuses mainly within the mine itself so that they understand the digital leadership competencies gap assessment tool within the mine itself. And then last year, 2023, we came up with impact evaluation dashboards and guidelines. So how these dashboards came about were through the use of the 5 tools that were developed in 2022 through gathering data from mining communities. And then there was a need to come up with developed that evaluate impact. What impact are the mines making within their mining host communities? So there was a socio-economic transformation impact evaluation dashboard, which allows for gauging social-related impacts on mine local communities, and the impact of automation dashboard, which allows gauging the impacts of automation and digitization, and the change impact evaluation dashboard, which is aimed at engaging impacts of change in the adoption of new modern technologies. And then this is very key, like to gauge impact, as it forms part of gaining insights from the communities as to how the mines can channel development through their social labor plans, and taking into account the integrated development plans which are developed by the municipalities to gain insights from the impact lens dashboard. Then mining companies would know that community A needs a school, for instance, and community B maybe needs a training facility, for instance, or community Z needs some support mechanisms from the mine. Then the mine will be able to channel their resources properly based on the insights that are gained from the communities. So the tools what they use, we developed them through Power BI. So there are indicators that that form part of the digital tools which collect the data, and then essentially it's these tools are like more than a tool. It's like a visionary compass that navigate like the mining industries through social responsibility and a sustainable future. And then these are some of the indicators that forms part of the 3 domain dashboard that I've just mentioned. So I won't go much into details on these indicators. And then this one is indicators on impact of automation on jobs. And then these are the indicators for the change management dashboard. And then from the indicators that I've just showed you, the results are then synthesized according to infographics. So you'll see the visual output from the ESG Lens dashboard that allows the mines to have a more detailed picture of progress along socio-economic development interventions within the host communities. Please note that these infographics vary according to the specific need of the mine and the mine community that the data was gathered from, and the engagements with the different community members. So from the preliminary data that we collected, you'll see the results. For example, like the most pressing community issue within this specific community was a pollution-free environment. So that was derived from gathering data from the community and access to land, as you've have been mentioning. So if you check on the far right of the screen, you'll see that there's like a lack of access to health facilities. There's a lack of skills within the community. So that is derived from those key indicators as we are gathering data. And then another one is the need for upliftment of the community. Like a pollution-free environment. I think I've already mentioned that one, and things like lack of education. And then if you look at the top, at the top top left of my left, you'll see like some of the soft skills that are required to assist the mining communities. And again, from the preliminary data that was collected, you'll see that there's a need for like education and training facilities, sports facilities, etc. And while the approach that the mines through their SLPs and through the IDPs, they need to follow a human-centered design approach in developing those tools. And then this is just like a slide to show like how urban planning, to integrate urban planning with some mining technologies that are available out there, like within mining. For instance, in mining, we've got a tool that uses like a photogrammetry, whereby we capture images of underground, and then we analyze those images. I think some of those tools are very will be very useful to urban planning. And then other tools that are used in the US like object detection algorithms that I think will be very useful within urban planning. I won't dwell much onto details because of time. And then another tool that's also available out there that can be utilized is the Spot Dynamic Spot Dog. I'm sure you are familiar with it. And if you check on the left on my left, you'll see one of the drones that was used when the very Strait exploded. So they used Delta Scan used a drone to do a scan of what's happening inside. I also had a video to show how they scanned the underground. So it's also another tool that's also being used in mining, which could also be incorporated in urban planning. So yeah, so that's how they did some scans underground in the underground tunnel of Bree Street, just to see what's really happening underground. So these are some of the tools that are being used within the mining industry, which can also be used for urban planning. And as I've also asked, initially I asked the question about skills development for urban planners to be able to operate some of these technologies, because we are moving into the future. So we need planners who are able to operate some of these technologies, because if I can ask any of the planners in the room, if any one of you can operate a drone, if there was a disaster and we wanted to operate a drone to do some analysis underground, where we will be able to operate those drones to gather data of what's exactly happening. So we need those skills so that we can be able to operate these technologies for the benefit of us and for future projection and development. If I can also give you a case of the building collapse at George. There are LiDAR technologies, and now we are busy developing an ITED technology, which is integrated thermal, I just forgot the actual name, which detect heats of people underground. So we can use those type of technologies also for planning, so that we detect where heat is, because human beings like release it. So yeah, so those are some of the technologies, and an iPhone has got like very good technologies that we can that you can use. So these are some of the scans that we did at the test mine, as you might have heard. I mentioned the test mine. So we used an iPhone to capture the underground, and then we came up with these pockets of data which we can analyze to get information for. And then these are some of the learnings from my presentation. I won't go much into details about it. And then this is just like additional information on key learnings for urban planning from mining, what urban planning can learn from mining. So thank you. So those are my contact details.
Sorry, I just need to make one short announcement. Those who have slips like this one who parked on the basement, we're gonna have some officials from SECPLAN who are gonna come collecting them, so that you need this one, it's your bill, then you're gonna have the receipt. They're gonna go get you the receipt somewhere. Sorry, those who parked at the basement, so that we don't get stuck. They're gonna come and collect. Yes, I suggested they might just sit where you seated. Someone will come and collect it, so just have it handy.
Hello, everybody. I've got the privilege of the graveyard shift, so I anticipated this. So, SACPLAN, thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. I am a professional planner. I am in good standing, and for the purpose of this section of the presentation, contradicting my receding hairline, I am below 35. So, I was asked to present on the significance of capital expenditure frameworks, and the heading itself, its premise is that capital expenditure frameworks in spatial planning is significant, and I would hope that premise is true, because I've been applying myself in this space for the past 8 years. I'm not going to do a short bio. I've got more passion for the topic itself than about myself. There is a link at the end that you can scan if you're interested. So let's start with why concern ourselves with something like capital expenditure frameworks. There's a very short reference to that in Spluma. But before we go into the legislation part of it all, I want to ask all of you just to recall whether there's somebody, maybe somebody a mentor or a parent or a grandparent, that made a decision that impacted you sitting here today, being a planner, doing what you do. In undergrad, all of us studied the history of planning. We studied ancient cities. We realized the impact that decisions people made thousands of years ago impacted how we live today and what we do today. But if you transpose that to what we do today, we realize that what we do today will impact future generations to come. So if you think of forward planning, of capital expenditure planning, how we spend our funds, that is a very important role in the spatial planning concept. It's one thing to dream up the big plans. It's another thing to allocate the money and to target it to areas that will have the best impact for generations to come. So TED Talk guidelines says you shouldn't start with a complex diagram. Well, I'm going to start with a complex diagram because for the first time presenting on this topic, I sit in front of an audience that should really understand and appreciate the diagram that we see on the screen right now. And it really speaks to the relationship between the different functions and responsibilities in municipalities within the integrated development plan and how the capital expenditure framework links these professions together and work with the different disciplines to really provide a capital expenditure framework. So talking about capital expenditure frameworks, we first have to start to ask ourselves, okay, but what is it? Because it is a fairly new concept and a new planning tool that we have to our availability in our toolbox. So I did a bit of international research, and I came across this definition by the Australian National Treasury, where they explain the purpose of what a capital expenditure framework is. And the purpose is really to provide a consistent, and this is important, not to change as political leadership change, a consistent, structured, so a clear method that we can follow, a consistent, structured and fit for purpose guidance to organizations, municipalities or councils in how we need to inform our investment decisions. So not the person speaking the loudest around the table, but really based on sound, rational principles. A concept that we're all familiar with. If you look at the COCTA guidelines, I'm not going to read the entire guideline. Again, TED Talk says you shouldn't read from definitions and so on. If you break this definition down, there's three main components of a capital expenditure framework. It's determining your demand, then determining your supply, and then finding your equilibrium point in how you're going to apply your supply to service your demand. Let's make that a bit more practical. I'm not going to break down the demand and all the components that goes into that. The guideline provides us with a lot of detail on that. It's suffice to say, population projections, pressure points, we know where the growth nodes are, we know where the backlogs are, and we know what investment is required in certain areas. But we also know we can't afford, as a previous speaker mentioned, we can't afford to spend all of our funds on all of the demand. The demand is just way bigger than the supply. But we also need to understand what the supply side is. And there we work with our CFOs in municipalities, chartered accountants, and the specialists in that realm to help us to understand what is the long-term funding envelope. What can we afford in the next 10 years, irrespective of the demand. Then for me, the magic of a capital expenditure framework is where these two worlds come together, is where you say, okay, if I understand this is what I need to invest in, and I know this is the money that I have available, what is the most important tasks that I'm going to, or projects, capital projects, that I'm going to invest in over the 10-year period? What's the framework that what's guiding our development? Now, I'm going to just give you a short peek on the equilibrium side that I've mentioned of those three ingredients. And in capital expenditure frameworks, you see they refer to a prioritization framework. And in the decision sciences, they refer to something called a multi-criteria assessment framework. And if you see how it's broken down, it takes a vision, your municipal IDP vision, it breaks it down into goals and objectives, something that we're all familiar about, and then it breaks it down into measurable criteria that we can quantify. And if we have that, and we understand what each capital project brings to the table, how much it costs, where it is, how many people it will benefit, what the environmental constraints are of them. These are all criteria you can subject to this criteria and assess all of your capital projects from all of your master plans and identify the projects that best align with the priorities of a community. So it's not a black box solution. It is simply taking this framework, applying the vision, and then testing all of the projects in the municipality to identify the projects that are best suited to be funded. Because obviously, if you're best aligned with your strategy, it's best to fund that project. So now the question, what makes it truly effective? And again, TED Talk guideline says, tell a story. So I'm going to tell you a story of one of the projects, well, this is actually two projects, but one municipality, where they developed the capital expenditure framework right after the COCTA guidelines was developed and published. And we were part of the first people to develop such a guideline. But that guideline or framework, the capital expenditure framework of the municipality, contained 342 projects over the 10-year period. Of those 342 projects, we did the review of that plan now just recently, earlier this year. We saw that of those 342, only 107 projects were actually found their way into the budget. Okay. Of those 107 projects that made it to the budget, only 22 of them reported an expenditure of more than 95%, which means that only 5% of the entire capital expenditure framework that we envisaged in 2019 was actually funded and started to hit the ground and started to be implemented. And we asked ourselves why. And for me, this is at this point a bad news story, but it's actually a good news story because we saw in other municipalities where we developed similar capital expenditure frameworks, leveraging on the local government accountability cycle, a program driven by National Treasury where they managed the budgeting of municipalities. We saw that if you slot this capital expenditure framework into the local government accountability cycle, you get a mechanism, a practical mechanism where the plan, the static document, actually starts to influence the internal budgeting processes of a municipality. So all the planning that we do in collaboration with the financial and infrastructure teams in municipalities actually finds their way through to being funded by the municipality and then implemented. So some critical success factors to make a capital expenditure framework work, so that it's not just a plan and a dust collector like we always refer to strategic projects or policies or plans. The first one is leadership, and the DDG mentioned it in the beginning, well, at the end of his presentation, is that we as planners should really sit at the helm of the table and coordinate the planning that's happening with different disciplines. And we saw this in Mirafong, a municipality under severe pressure, financial and otherwise, where the planner put up his hand and said, I recognize the value of developing a capital expenditure framework and I will pull together a team to run this, irrespective of the constraints. And they are, I'm glad to say, quite successful in how they're pulling together their planning disciplines in the municipality. The next one is, yes, it takes one person to get it going, but the second mechanism necessary is a capital planning forum or a technical task team or whatever you'd like to call it. Some sort of forum where you practically and physically come together in the municipality as the technical team. I'm not talking about only the senior leadership, as a technical team where the planner and the engineers, library department, community department, finance department sit around the table once a month and really talk about the projects that the municipality are driving to develop and planning to develop in the next 10 years. We've seen this in Stellenbosch, where they have a very successful capital planning forum that guides their planning process, maybe even leading the charge in South African municipalities. Then the third point that I want to bring across is principle-driven decision-making. We know how contested the space is. We know the engineer that argues to install this road, this water pipe, because it's a revenue-generating pipe, so it's a good idea to invest it. It is a good idea. But did you consider other factors? And what about the person that wants to develop a library or a clinic that's not necessarily as revenue-generating? How do we fund that? On which principles? So in the city of Tshwane, to deal with this contesting factors, they adopted an investment policy, a capital investment policy, that you can find through the Built Environment Performance Plan that I've adopted and now through their capital expenditure framework. So investment is based on principles, which means that private sector investors really have comfort and see transparency in how decisions is made in terms of how money is being spent. Then, at the City of Mplatuzi, they realized that the development of a capital expenditure framework, it takes quite a while. And it's not necessarily that we're going to get it right the very first time, but it's associated with the budgeting process of the municipality. So each year we can improve it step by step by step, playing the long game in getting the strategic planning framework developed, which I also appreciate as a long-term planner. And then the last one is a project that we did recently together with the provincial government in the Western Cape for 3 municipalities developing their capital expenditure frameworks and long-term financial plans. And when our chartered accountant member on the team presented the long-term financial plan to the Swartland municipality team, at the end of the process, the planner, with 25 years of experience, listening to the intricacies that goes into the financial planning component of a CF, responded and said, now I understand what they have to deal with. So that really speaks to me to us as planners facilitating the session and being able to understand what different professions needs to deal with so that we can collaborate and effect change through the RDP process. Now, it would be funny to talk about implementation frameworks and to end the presentation not with a call to action, just to leave it in the air. So I want to bring it home a little bit. So if we look at capital expenditure frameworks for each one of us sitting here, you all live in a municipality, you all have recognition of spatial development frameworks and should know the SDF that affects you directly where you stay. So just think about the spatial development frameworks that's there, think about how developed they are. Are they in place? Are they developed? Do they contain a capital expenditure framework or not? And see where you find your municipality on that scale. And then on the other end of that scale is looking at the integration between planning and budgeting offices specifically. And planning, I refer to infrastructure and town planning. Do we have systems in place in municipalities? And I'm not talking about only institutional operations. I'm talking about physical, technological systems that's in place to support this very complex and dynamic process. Where would you find yourself on this scale? And then if it is close to the red or the orange, then obviously there's room for improvement and definitely room in the space of capital expenditure frameworks to further the mission there. So I want to leave you with a last thought is we can do all the futuristic planning that we want, nice concepts and spatial planning ideas, but if we don't bring that to the future and start to action them today, it will never realize. So planning is bringing the future into the present so that we can do something about it now. So that's me. Thank you very much for the session. And again, thank you very much, SACPlan, for the opportunity.
Thanks so much, Louis, Tsepo, and Renir, for a very exciting presentation that you have just shared with us. We're going to take only 3 questions. If please, we could limit the preamble to the question and go straight to what we'll want to ask our panelists. Anyone by show of hands? I'm seeing, okay, it's you. And any other taker? Okay, going once. Oh, okay, you'll be our last one. We'll only take 2. Thanks so much. Let me start with you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sure we're all tired. Mine's not really a question, but a comment to Dr. Lategan on the mega human settlements topic. I did a land suitability analysis study investigating in a particular municipality on the 6 mega human settlement projects that they had in the municipality. Were they located on the most suitable land parcels? And of those 5, only 2 was most suitable. And the rest are sort of white elephants in the municipal area. So I think it's a topic that's worth exploring more. And yeah, I think it also gives us opportunities for those who want to do masters to do more research in the topic. So thank you for that.
Thanks to the panelists. My name is Tuli again. Renee, just a question to you. We've also previously had experience doing CEFs, and one of the fundamental challenges in municipalities is the lack of data that exists out there, especially in terms of their infrastructure master plans. So I'm not sure how Novus has circumvented that particular challenge, maybe in the municipalities that you're dealing with, because without the necessary information from municipalities from an infrastructure data perspective, it's very difficult to do meaningful CEFs that, you know, yeah, that's, I think, my question. How have you as Novus circumvented that problem? Thanks.
Thanks for the 2 questions. I'm now going to hand over to the panelists. If maybe there's last one, you're still welcome, although it will depend on how long the responses are.
I'll just thank you for your comments, and I look forward to your application at CPUT.
Nice. Thank you, Tuli, again. So the it is definitely a challenge. Data is a challenge, and we appreciate the efforts to make geospatial data also available, but infrastructure data specifically and what municipalities are planning is difficult to get hold of, especially when you talk about master plans. So the way we circumvented the issue, and I don't want to say circumvent the issue, we facilitated the dilemma to drive it to a success factor for the municipality, is to develop technology. And I'm not going to say develop an application, but it is a software as a service that municipalities use. Instead of once off asking for data, collecting it, doing an analysis, handing over and done, this technology helps municipalities to collect all of their capital needs on one platform. And I'm talking capital needs, master plan specifically, but also when they do community participation, once those requests of the community has been submitted, to also subject this to the platform, which then enables us to do the prioritization and the scenario planning that is necessary to determine what the investment framework is going forward. So the first one is the technology. The second one is the process working with the municipality and to integrate with their financial management systems. And saying that it's a process is you can develop all the technology that you want. I think it was referenced to the drones as well. There's a human element to it. If you don't have a pilot, if you don't have people in the municipality operating it, then what do we do with technology? So the first one is getting the technology, but secondly is sitting with those municipalities, spending time with the technical people and breaking that master plan that some consultant did for them down into tangible projects, line items, and conceptualize them and upload them to the process, to the platform, where they then have a chance to find their way through to the budgeting process and into the CFO's office. I hope that provides some insight. If not, please come and visit. Then we can chat.
Thanks. I think we have come to the conclusion of our panel session for our panelists. Maybe before our panelists leave the stage, can I ask the acting CEO for the present, please? Okay, I'm now going to hand over to the chairperson, the program director, Professor Hope Magedimisha Shapungu.
Thank you very much. Oh, okay, we have now almost just a few minutes reached the end of this program. I want to apologize. No, we combined two programs, so that's why it's this long. I promise next Indaba is not going to be this long, so please don't be discouraged to come again. I think I will ask the chair. No, this is your one. I think you're confusing. That's Ms. Manako to hand this over, and chair, he will be directed by the CEO in terms of the handing over of certificates. Ms. Manako? Just for the gifts. You're handing over the gifts there. To who? To the... Yeah. Can I take? The other two, do they get?
Thank you. In the interest of time, I'm gonna ask myself to come to this podium. I think thank you. At this point in time, I'll invite the Chair of Council, the Chair of Transformation Committee to join me on stage, as well as the champion for the youth at SECPLAN. We have got Mr. Tukiseso Kopela, who is the champion for Youth and Transformation. I think they will be joining me shortly for the handing over of the certificate. Maybe I will just explain that one, we do evaluate all the applications we receive thoroughly. The last 4 presentations that you saw, they were actually identified through evaluating the applications, even though these motivations in summary. So I think we had 4, we could get at least 4 meaningful presentations that we could pick from that. So I think my technology is just acting up now. So we are going to be recognizing, we're gonna have a top 3, and then but outside the top 3, we're not gonna give out 30. We want to encourage others to also apply next year. And sometimes it's about how you package the application and motivation to SACPLAN. So if you do good, you may join us as a panelist next year. And then, so if you have not received the certificate this year, there is still a chance to do so in the coming year. And I think those who could not join us physically, we would also like to congratulate them. We understand there is cost containment and other things. So that's why we also made the Indaba a one-day event. Initially, we wanted it to be a 2-day event, but we realized cost containment across all sectors where planners are based is still a very much big factor. I think Mr. Tukisetso is we're gonna be recognizing 15 planners that have made a valuable contribution and are on the rise. So those 15 planners, we say to them, we recognize your work, and then you will see one of the panelists actually is not part of the top 3. It doesn't mean that if you are in the top 3, you are the best of the best. So, but it simply means that based on the balance and the scoring sheet and the evaluation criteria across board, there were those that were just shining out more. But all the 15 that we're going to recognize now in the top 3 are going to be almost on the same level. It's just one variation or 2. So the percentages, I think the panel set for more than a day when they were going through the applications. So I think I'm not going to go through the process. So first, on the top 15 planners, in addition to the top 3, we've got Ms. Riabetswe Masomboga from the category Environment, who is an open space planning specialist from the city of Johannesburg. If she is here, she can join us on stage. If she could not make it here, I think, Mr. Kopela, you can put the certificate down. Is she here? Oh, we can clap hands as she come and join us to collect her certificate from Mr. Kopela. Ms. Riabetswe Masomboga. So the green space things that were happening, I think she's hopefully assisting the city of Johannesburg with all of those. And then you can just pause for a picture moment, then we go to the next. Next on the list, we have got Miss Marcia Best, is she here? So Marcia Best will also be coming to join us on stage. She's from the private sector. She's a project manager and GIS spatial analyst, and I think we are getting a few planners now joining the GIS fraternity from BVI Consulting. She will also take a picture moment and receive her certificate. Then next, we've got Trinil Naidu. Is she here? If she's not here, we can clap hands for her in absentia. I know KZN is very far, especially if you're driving, and when you're flying, you need to wake up very early. Then we also have Mr. Success Ngobeni, who's an urban planner at Uchani Consulting. I didn't see him here. Can we clap hands for him? And then we've got Mr. You'll forgive with the pronunciation. I'm still learning some of the languages. Korean Pillay, also from Uchani Consulting. I also did not see him. But if he joined us late, we can just clap for him as well. And then we also have, oh, apologies. I saw on the IEC someone complained, independent candidates, where is my picture? So all along I thought the picture moment is there. And then we've got Kiara Rampul. Still not there. Okay. I think technology is technology. But I think we can proceed. We've got Kia Rampul. Is she here? And then she can also join. She works for Zimanga Urban and Rural Development Design. And then we also have Mr. Rene Oosthuizen, who just gave us a brilliant presentation on capital expenditure frameworks on spatial planning. Can we clap for him? And thank you for the brilliant presentation. And then we, next we have, for the camera. Oh, okay. Maybe there was a prophet that told me to switch it off. I don't know where the prophet was from. Okay, thank you. And then next we have Mr. Johan Kalitz, Janse van Rensbeek. I'm not sure if he's here. If he's not here, we can clap for him. He's a town and regional planner and market researcher. And then next we have Miss Bridget Morongwa Sloane. I think I saw her. Can we clap for her as she takes the podium? She is a junior project manager at the Johannesburg Development Agency. And next we have Komocho Rakubu from eThekwini, senior professional planner. Is she here? I think we can clap for her in absentia. I told you Durban is very far. I come from that side of the world. And then next we have Mr. Nyadzani Brian Mudavi, all the way from Vembe District Municipality in Limpopo. I see Tsepo is smiling. Can we clap for him in absentia? Maybe just to add that Brian was also the top recipient last year. We had a student essay competition. He wrote a very interesting essay on transformation. We awarded 5 essays last year, and he's now a candidate planner. And he continues to make inroads, particularly in the work of municipal planning tribunals. And then next we have Mr. Mavela Nkosikona Ndlovu from eThekwini Municipality. He's a team leader and a senior technical planner there. I know he's not here. We can clap for him in absentia. Then next we have got Adri van der Merwe Odendal, professional officer at the City of Cape Town, Blouberg District. If she is here, she can stand, or we can clap for her in absentia. Next we have got Koketso Mary Jane Lesedi, manager for strategic partnerships and projects for construction and education and training SETA. Is she here? If she's not here, we can clap for her. I was hoping to see this planner because we need SETA to come on board to assist the candidates and other things, but we're gonna trace her because I think she's in a very key role at the SETA program. And then next we have Miss it's not Miss Koketso, it's Miss Tokelo Nche, who is an area manager, Human Settlements Department at the City of Johannesburg. Can we clap for her as she comes? I think now those are the 15, I think we will ask for a photo moment. for a combined group at the end. Please don't leave with your certificate yet. So those are the 15 planners outside the top 3 that have made meaningful inroads in the space of urban and regional planning. And then I will now ask Mr. Kopela after the picture to come and welcome others from this side, while Prof. Hope Makidimisha Chipungu joins the chair of council on stage with the top 3. I think the top 3, it's about the diversity. I think we consider a number of factors. So one, some of the planners that are part of the 15 that we just announced, you find that someone is doing a brilliant work wherever he's working, but there is no continuous learning. They're not doing any extra learning. They're not exposing themselves to the new technologies. But you can see the projects they are working on. So I think amongst the top 3, you'll find that some of them may be academics, some of them may be in the private sector, but they've done really well in terms of diversifying their planning skills and competencies, not just sticking to the scope of work where they are based, and also trying to learn new things and new technologies. And I think you saw from the panelists that we do have quite a number of young planners that are on their way to the top, and we hope that in 5 years' time, we will be technologically advanced. So number 3 from the top 3, we've got Mr. Tsepo Clement Maswanganye, who's a project administrator for the Mandela Mining Project. He was for the 2024, he became the 3rd, so he gets the bronze medals. And I think we'll also be communicating with the members of the top 3 in terms of some of the additional recognitions that we're gonna be giving to them. Congratulations, Tsepo, and I think it is exciting that we now have planners that are taking space in the mining sector. And second place, we have Mr. Oket Pretorius, who is a lecturer at the University of Johannesburg. Congratulations, Mr. Pretorius. You are the 2nd best young planner of 2024, and we trust that you will continue helping us. I think DDG, it links to this Pluma development principles, the economic shocks and environmental shocks that we must plan against. I think that's where his research mostly is focusing. Congratulations, sir. And then the moment of recording. The Young Planner of the Year for the year 2024 is Dr. Louis Ladechan from the NCAP Lecturer, Department of Urban Planning, Cape Peninsula University of Technology. I think at this moment, we'd like to take this chance to also encourage other young planners to invest. I think he's working on a number of projects locally and internationally, involved in a number of partnerships, research and innovation. And we do encourage that other planners also continue doing the same. And I think from last year, we have adopted a principle that at least for the best planner of the year, we're gonna be giving a trophy. And I think when we go to Free State for the roadshow, we're gonna also give Dr. Musokhai. And I think we will also want to thank the department for the support. And I will now hand over back to the program director for further action. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, colleagues, for coming. I did say that, trust me, the next one, the second one, it won't be this long. So I'll give this to the chair of the council to do the closing remarks. And thank you very much. It has been such a wonderful experience to see all of you, you know, like we miss you. You know, it's such a good experience. Thank you so much. Chair, over to you.
Thank you very much, Program Director. I think I should say once again, thank you for your patience and for staying up until this point in time. Really appreciate. I learned a lot today. I like it at the time when the DGG said, a good planner is a listening planner. And I think it goes together with Renee's Westhuizen statement that planning is bringing the future to the present. I think it was on his last slide. I thought that was a powerful statement. I learned concepts, I learned statements, I learned questions. There are stimulating questions that I got, but most strikingly, I got assignments. There were so many things that were said here, and I felt like, oh, I haven't read that one. I haven't checked that one. So thank you for such a stimulating engagement. I also learned a lot from Hosi Ngove. He kept on referring to chapter 12. And I thought, when was the last time I read the Constitution in order to actually look at this? So I'm going to be reading chapter 12, Your Majesty. And I think you know what it means for students that are here. I actually really find the presentation very stimulating. Tsepo, you made a statement about indigenous systems of spatial planning. I am not sure if we've actually explored something like that, but I just thought that was an interesting, inquiry and concept. Another assignment for me. Professor Mpambugeli Tulisile, it was just, I think, a drizzle of concepts. And I was busy picking, and some were falling down, but it was so fascinating. Climate crisis, citizenship. I like the concept, and it stimulated me to think hard. Cosmologies of land, and there's a lot more that you actually said. I thought that was really one of the enriching concepts. There were also questions that were raised. What does smart city mean for us? Again, that was Professor Mpambugeli. Helena raised the question of what does professionalism mean? It might seem like an ordinary question, but it's a question that we probably don't always ask ourselves, especially when we are working in certain spaces, especially when we are working with traditional authorities in rural areas, especially when we claim we are planners. What does professionalism mean? Zano, I like your challenge that you placed for us for the need to move from a fragmented towards an integrated system of professionalism, and the framework itself stimulated me to say I need to look at this because I haven't been close to that kind of space. I like the Dr. Pretorius, the pillars of resilience. It took my attention. I didn't acknowledge everyone, but I just want to say I learned a lot today, and I think it was really fascinating. For me, it's not the numbers, it's the quality of the engagement and the substance that we're actually grappling with. I thought that was really, really great. And at this point in time, let me once more congratulate the young planners that got awards. Congratulations. Can we give them a huge clap? And from that, I want to now express thanks on behalf of SECPLAN. May I take this time to express on behalf of SECPLAN our sincere and profound gratitude to all of you for being with us until this time. I think special thanks really goes to the DDG who's been with us since morning and the chief as well. We really appreciate your support. I think we have achieved our goal in bringing planners together to engage in crucial issues that affect our profession in this country. We have made the space very safe, and I think we have engaged bringing up very stimulating conversation. I thought it was stimulating and informative. I hope all the presentations will be shared with all of us after this session. I want to express my thanks to the department for sponsoring the venue and my favorite, the food. Many thanks indeed to the department. I want to extend our thanks to Mr. McCann and Mr. Ashley Hay, still here. Thank you so much for really working with us. And please extend our thanks to the admin staff that has been helping us to organize the event. I want to thank a resounding expression of thanks to the speakers. I think we really had good speakers today, very stimulating, freewheeling, and very informative. I cannot name everyone, but I think you're all familiar with the lineup, and so thank you so much to all the speakers. Can we just give them a hand of applause? I want to thank the exhibitors outside. I think we had 3 or 4 companies that were exhibiting outside. So many thanks to them. Please, let's just clap for them. I want to thank the facilitators for today's sessions, starting with Professor Magidimisha Chipungu, Ms. Helena Jacobs, and Mr. I'll tell you now. Kutisetso Kopelo. Thank you so much. Can we give them a round of applause, please? I think they've done an excellent job. And then next, I want to thank the office staff from SECPLAN and everyone in SECPLAN that made this event a success. Can you please give them a round of applause? And even a bigger round of applause. I want to express my really sincere appreciation of you, the delegates, the participants, who've been so patient and giving so much by way of your contributions. Please, a big round. You have really made the difference. I hope we can have even larger numbers next time. Many thanks and best wishes as you're traveling back home. You are highly appreciated. Thank you so much. This marks the end of today's conference. Thank you so much.
Did I leave somebody? Yeah, you did. Okay, no, so it's fine. Everyone can go, but I just want to request some pictures, those who got some hours, so that we can also profile this quickly. If you can come in front here, just a group picture, quickly. And I will ask the DG to stay just 2 minutes for pictures with us. And I know I'm abusing you. You're gonna kill me. The DG, if you can just stay, please. DG, if you can just stay behind with us. Our recipients, our top 15, and of course, our top 15 and our top 3, please. If you're still here,